Welcome, everyone. I'm Noam Segal. I'm currently the head of UX research at Zapier. And as part of that role, I lead research on a lot of things to do with AI and automation. But more importantly for today, I'm a research partner to Genway. And Genway is an AI research platform. And you're going to see today, if you haven't done this yet, how you can use Genway to launch your AI agent on any research topic, but we'll dive into a specific research topic today in 60 minutes or much less, even, I would suggest. If you have any questions, just let me know. We're also joined by Nathan, who is the co-founder and CEO at Genway. He might not be here for the whole time, but welcome, Nathan, and always good to have you here. Welcome to familiar faces and names I'm seeing in the crowd, Amanda and Brad and Mayan and others. Really good to have you. I have a topic that I want to research, and the topic is the effects of remote work 5 years post-pandemic. Many of us transitioned to remote work when COVID hit, and many of us have stayed working remote ever since. About 5 years into remote work, I really wanted to leverage Genway to better understand how remote work has affected people's job satisfaction and many other things. And so I thought I'd use that research topic as a way to demonstrate how to build an AI research agent with Genway. But before that, I'm asking you, I would really love to hear from you in the chat. Why did you join the session today? What are you most excited to hear or learn about so I can make sure I cover those topics? What are you itching to discuss? I'm very open. I'm willing to discuss anything and answer all of your questions. So please don't hold back and please share. You can use the chat. And I strongly recommend either logging into your existing Genway account if you already have one, or opening one for free so you can experience this process firsthand. There is no better way to learn than to build. And I've come to learn that so much more ever since I started using Genway. I think I'm a top user of Genway and maybe other AI platforms as well. I'm a top user for Zapier as well, where I also build a lot of AI, a lot of automations. I love this stuff. I'm passionate about it. Clearly, you are too if you joined. Open a Genway account and actually build alongside me, or build later, build over the weekend, whatever works for you. It's the best way to learn. So let's make sure this is interactive. Robert's mentioning interested in launching an agent-based feedback initiative with my customers. Awesome. That's exactly what we're going to be doing. And let me know if you have any questions as we go through this. I do want to talk just a little bit about what Genway is, in case you don't know. I want to just briefly talk about the research topic of the day. And I want to hear what's top of mind for you, by the way. And then I also want to, in a single slide, just talk about what does it even mean to build an agent? What is an agent and how does that differ from maybe other AI related concepts? And then we're just going to jump into Genway, build together. I'm going to show you the steps I go through. And I want to say that if you're also interested in the results of this research that we come up with together, then in an upcoming webinar, date TBD, we'll send all of you invites. I'll be sharing the results of this research, and then you can judge for yourselves. Did we get the insights that we planned to get? Do we have any issues at all? Do we have any really interesting opportunities that we weren't expecting to see come out of the research? Fully transparent, just going to show you the insights that come out of this. I have a feeling it's going to be great, but let's wait and see. So that's what we're going to be doing. Larissa, thanks for your comment. You want to learn more about research agents and how they can be used to deliver insights quicker, what tools exist out there, differences. Happy to cover that. Robert, you're adding that you'd like to know whether agent-based feedback requests have higher response rates than online surveys. I'd actually love to answer that. I don't have an explanation for this, but I've noticed over my career and the past year plus of using Genway that people are much more interested in talking, whether it's with an AI or not, but especially with an AI versus answering surveys. It's a lot harder to get engagement with surveys. Again, I'm not sure why this is, and it is possible that there are some novelty effects with AI that might wear off, and maybe they won't. But I feel that agent based feedback does have higher response rates than surveys. And you can get much deeper feedback than you could ever get with a survey. I think we used to think of surveys as we will use this thing because it's our only way to get any feedback at scale. We can't get feedback at scale with interviews. Now we can. So we'll talk about that. How do we get feedback, qualitative, deep feedback, but at scale? This is exactly what Genway is for. So in case you're coming into this workshop without any knowledge of what Genway is, an AI research platform that enables you to create AI agents to do either usability studies where you can test Figma prototypes and gather the exact user feedback you need about that prototype, or you can conduct what Genway calls contextual interviews, which is basically deep dives into whatever behaviors, attitudes, perceptions you're interested in. And this type of interview, the contextual interview, is what we'll be doing today when it comes to investigating remote work. So that's the agent we're building today. The topic I chose, again, in case you missed the beginning of the webinar, is the effects of remote work 5 years post-pandemic. Now, I could have chosen anything. It doesn't really matter. That's the beauty of AI research. It's basically infinitely scalable. We could research 10 different topics, but I had to choose one. And so I chose this because I think it's still rather unclear what the effects have been on all of us who are working remotely when it comes to how satisfied we are with our jobs, how engaged we are with our jobs, how much belonging we feel at the companies we work at because we're not in an office every day with our co-workers. And maybe we want to investigate other stuff about remote work. It's a question, right? That's the topic of the day. And the next step, I feel, is to just align for a second before we jump into Genway on what an agent even is. And then I'm going to also get to a couple of comments I'm seeing here. So I took this from Microsoft's GitHub. And I appreciate this definition. Think of an AI agent as a goal-driven software actor wrapped around a large language model. And instead of waiting for one-shot prompts, what an agent will do repeatedly is perceive, plan, act, and learn in a loop, calling external tools, in this case, Genway, updating its own memory and deciding the next best action until the goal is met. In this case, our goal is going to be about getting very particular insights on remote work. And our agent is going to plan that research together with us through a process called Craft with AI, which I'll show you. It's going to act on our behalf and actually conduct the interviews it needs to conduct. And then it's going to learn and analyze and synthesize those data so we can then process those insights and glean the insights that we need. That's agentic AI. Let me know if you have any questions about this or any thoughts. Rachel, want to see the power of agents and how easy or not it is to set up an agent for workflow. Let me know if this answers that. And then Brad's asking, this is maybe a bit specific of a deep dive or cut, but I'm considering replacing in-product CSAT with an AI moderated approach. For example, that will ask CSAT and then be able to do follow-up questions to get more info. So I'm curious what that might look like. It's a great comment, Brad. And I think that for those of us who track metrics like CSAT, CES, customer effort score, NPS if you unfortunately do that. I don't support that. Or any Light or any other such metric, you've probably noticed that the most signal you get from those metrics is really in the follow-up question to the metric itself. And because that's the case, it makes you wonder, should I even be including these in-product surveys at all? Or, to Brad's point, is it better to just have a Genway agent or a link to a Genway agent to particular customers and just offer them the chance to share how satisfied they are and precisely why or why not? It's pretty damn simple, and an AI agent, unlike a human researcher, can be available 24/7 for as many customers as you need. Another question from Tej. Are agents more relevant mostly in enterprise use cases and less so in consumer use cases? I don't think so at all. If the question is around B2B versus B2C, I really can't think of any reason why an agent would be less relevant for a B2C company. So to me, equally relevant. Okay, so are you ready to jump in? And again, I'm monitoring the chat, but also let me know if you have questions or if I'm not answering your questions, because there's a lot coming in and it's not always easy to follow everything. So let me know. And Mayan, I'll get to your question. Let me stop sharing that screen and move into Genway. Alrighty. You're looking at my Genway homepage, and I did create a V1 of my project, but I want to start from absolute scratch with you together so you see the whole workflow. Let's do that and create a project from scratch. So this is the homepage. You can see all of the projects I've been running and how many interviews I've conducted, and you can see some highlighted projects here. And there are a few ways in which you can create a project. One of them, which I won't be using today, is that you can have a voice-based conversation with an agent to build an agent. But instead, I'm going to go here and click on Create a Project in the top right-hand side and choose Contextual Interviews. And I'm going to call this Remote Work V2, version 2. It doesn't matter. This is just for the purposes of demonstration. Now, at this point, we enter an experience called Craft with AI. And this is a very typical experience for any AI agent building, where you need to give the agent some fundamental instructions on what you need for the project to be successful, right? What you need it to do. Now, Genway have gone through many iterations of this experience, and they landed on 5 key questions that if you answer those questions, the agent can be successful in doing great research. And those questions are here on the left. So I just want to go over those questions quickly, and then we'll start plugging in our answers, and we'll also go into Genway GPT, which is a really cool way of generating answers to these questions and solving the blank page problem, which is, oh, I don't even know where to start. So the first question is, what's your project's objective? And by that, we mean, why are you creating this project? What do you hope to learn from it? And if you have any background information, prior research, existing insights, if you can clarify what the need for the research is, what's the research gap? The second question we'll be answering is, what topics will we be covering? And by topics, what areas do you want to discuss? What assumptions are you maybe trying to validate? What new knowledge are you trying to gain? And especially, what are the actual research questions you want the system to be asking? And of course, AI and AI agents are somewhat non-deterministic, so they won't necessarily ask the question in the exact way you phrased it, but that's okay. That's exactly the point of using a system like this. We don't want to be feeding it a list of questions that it won't steer away from totally. That would just make it a survey. So that's the topics we'll be covering. The third question is absolutely critical because the agent needs to understand where it's trying to get to. What's the goal? So the question is, what would you consider a successful project outcome? What does success look like? And we always have this as researchers in our research plans. What's the outcome we're looking for? What impact do we want this project to have on product or marketing or business strategy? What does success look like? So Mayan is asking, how does the agent deal with tone and sarcasm? And honestly, I'm not sure I have a very technically knowledgeable answer to that question. I can tell you that as of now, AI systems like Genway don't have, I would suggest, the best ability, certainly not the ability that maybe a human would have, to identify that someone is speaking in a sarcastic tone. We're not quite there yet, nor are we at a place where these systems can identify certain facial expressions or read sentiment from conversation. But I do imagine those capabilities are not far off. And so I wouldn't want to put a timestamp on it, and maybe Nathan can also jump in if he's still here. But I imagine that within the next year, we're going to see massive transformations in voice models. I think that AI companies have invested a lot more in making AI sound more human rather than improving AI's ability to better understand things like tone. But we're going to get there in the coming months, I would suggest. Juarez is asking, I'd love more flexibility in Genway in terms of analytics. Everything is AI generated. So I feel like I don't have any control related to my research outcomes. We won't be talking about the analysis and the synthesis part of this experience today because we're just building the agent, Juarez. But I will say that within Genway, you can add any themes you like. You can add any tags you like. You can transform the insights in all sorts of ways. You actually have quite a bit of control over both the interviews themselves, because you can modify the interviews, and on the insights you're getting. And if you feel like the main insights you're getting aren't really what's coming out of the raw data, you can add your own themes, you can add your own tags, you can transform the analysis. So I think you do have quite a bit of control. And if you join next time when we cover the outcomes, then I'd be more than happy to showcase that and get your feedback. Renu is asking, how would AI agents work across domains and user segments? For example, interviewing a truck driver versus a DevOps engineer. I've experienced higher technology trust issues with specific user segments. My experience is that truck drivers hesitate to trust technology and respond better to humans than technology in research projects. AI isn't for everyone. AI systems aren't for everyone. If you happen to work at a company that serves truck drivers, and if it's the case that truck drivers are less likely to trust AI and more likely to want to talk to humans, talk to humans, have them talk to humans. There's no way to get around that, and there's no reason to. The fourth question in this craft with AI experience is, who will we be interviewing in this project? Because knowing that helps the system ask better questions. So what are your customer characteristics? What segments do they belong to? What are the demographics? What are the psychographics? That does help the system adjust the interview, but it's not going to help the system deal with people who just don't want to talk to AI. That's just the truth of speaking candidly. So I totally hear you. And if people don't want to speak to AI, then they shouldn't. Noam is asking, how does building a Genway agent differ from doing the same on another AI engine? So Noam, by another AI age engine, do you mean just like ChatGPT or Claude, like a general use system? Or do you mean some of Genway's competitors or something else? Let me know and then I'll answer that question. But you have to say which, Noam, because you're saying exactly, and I'm not sure if you mean ChatGPT or you mean Genway competition? Rachel is asking, have you experimented with the amount of detail necessary or unnecessary to create a successful agent? Any advice on best practices? That's a really great question. I'll answer that by finishing up this next bit and starting to jump into answering these questions. The final question you need to answer, and keep me true, Rachel, if I don't answer, then let me know. The final question is, do you have any general project guidelines? And this question is a bit different from the others. It's optional, unlike the other four questions. And here, you can basically put anything that you feel would help the AI ask more relevant and more useful questions during the interview. This is your way of tweaking the interview. So now, Noam, to get back to your question around ChatGPT agents versus Genway agents, here's my quick take, and it's more of a high level industry take. There are only a few companies that are building like the foundations of AI, the foundational models of AI. And one of those companies is ChatGPT. Another company is Anthropic with Claude. Another company is Perplexity. They're building the foundations of AI systems. And the rest of the companies, like Genway, are building on top of those models. But where Genway differs from, say, ChatGPT is that it's a system built for researchers. And therefore, I think this is like the golden age of user experience, and it's the golden age of taste making, because ChatGPT is not built for researchers. And even though you can maybe build an agent that would somehow be able to interview users, there would be so much functionality missing to make it useful to you and to make it work for you as a researcher, as a research leader, or a non-researcher. So you'll see that Genway has all sorts of functionality that ChatGPT just doesn't offer and probably won't offer because they're not investing in specific segments like research. I hope that answers the question, but always happy to have more discussion around these things. Rachel, going back to your question, I absolutely have experimented with how much detail do I need to provide Genway, right? And if I were to just answer this question, what's my project's objective, by saying, I want to understand the remote work experience. Now, whenever you answer a question, you have to save it, and then Genway analyzes the answer. And if the answer doesn't include the key information Genway needs to succeed as an agent doing research, it's not going to pass. Let's see what happens. So I click on Save and Analyze Answer, and the system thinks. And in this case, it's okay. If you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with that. And it actually passed. It passed the validation. Now, I'm not feeling great about that, right? Like, I feel like I did not give it enough context. And I suspect that if we were to literally go with that answer, we're not going to see a good project come out of it. So what I would rather do, and tell me if you can see this part of the screen, is go to Genway GPT, which is Genway's custom GPT for creating a fully fledged project. Can you see Genway GPT now on the screen? Or is it still on the Genway tab? Awesome. Thanks, Mayan. So what Genway GPT is, this is a way for us to answer all 5 questions at a level where we can be a lot more confident that the answers we're giving give the agent all of the context it needs to succeed. And so I'm going to put in this prompt. 5 years after the pandemic shift to remote work, organizations are still navigating the balance between flexibility and connections. I want to explore, how has remote work evolved beyond an emergency adaptation into strategic workplace design? What unexpected impacts has remote work had on team cohesion, creativity, knowledge transfer? Which team dynamics thrive in remote settings and which suffer? How do we measure productivity meaningfully in distributed teams? And what new practices have emerged to support remote collaboration? Let me just show you what happens when I send this off to Genway GPT, which again is a custom GPT built by Genway specifically to give you the answers you need to the 5 questions that Genway needs answers to. So this is structured in Markdown and it's ready to copy into the system. And so, for example, it's saying, okay, the objective of this project is to understand how remote work has evolved from a reactive solution to a strategic part of workplace design. It's pulling in some background information that it was able to find online. It's pulling in prior research. It's pulling in some existing insights it's able to find online. Genway GPT can use any of the models that OpenAI have released. You can choose the model you want to use, just like you would choose the model with any other GPT, any other custom GPT, or the regular ChatGPT experience. And if we scroll down, here's the answer to the second question. What topics will we be covering? And it's giving me topics, assumptions to validate, research questions, the works. It's giving me a definition of what does success look like? What are the minimum insights I would need in order to be pleased with the agent's work and saying, great, I got the insights I needed. It's also suggesting customer characteristics, segments, demographics, and even psychographics that maybe I should focus on in this project. And it can, if you want, also give other criteria or guidelines to the system. For example, here it's giving a suggestion like, do you want to shape this for a specific industry or refine this further? But one thing you can actually do is I'd love for you to help me brainstorm interview questions. So let's just do help me brainstorm interview questions. I don't know, let's see what happens. And then based on the project's focus, which is these things, it's giving me research questions I might want to ask and I might want to input into the system. So again, the first step we went through is we just gave a high-level prompt of what we want to investigate. And the point with that is to avoid the blank page problem where, you have something on your mind you want to investigate, but you're not quite sure where to get started. Rachel's question, so you do this. Rachel is now asking, is all this data private to your company, or does Genway keep or use it to improve the product? To the best of my knowledge, Genway will not use your company's data to improve the product. There's an expectation that when you use any AI product, it won't be training itself on your data. But what Genway can do, and I think any platform will do in the future, is it has the base layer AI models it uses. And then it also has a sort of middle tier model of the company you work for, where it's building up knowledge on how you do research, what research you do, and all of the context about your company. And it's using that not to improve its own models, but to improve the results you're getting, right? And so if I use Genway GPT within my company to build out projects, it can pull from company knowledge to improve those projects. So those two things are very different. I hope I clarified the difference, Rachel. I don't think any AI company can afford to use company data to train on. It's just a no-go in terms of compliance, legal, security, not going to work. But these systems won't work very well if they're not learning and if they're not somewhat integrated into the company's systems. Now, Renew is asking, would this privacy discussion be part of the procurement process when the company works with Genway for licensing and purchasing? I'm not a procurement person. I think the procurement process depends on the company you work for. These days, companies are going through specialized procurement processes for AI products like Genway. And I imagine the company you work for, if you work for a company rather than for yourself or as a freelancer, they would have those discussions. But Genway's competitors have all of the security and compliance related certifications that you need to have in order to operate in this space. I want to get back to the more agentic realm here. We solved the blank page problem by giving the initial prompt. We got answers to the questions, which we can then plug in. And then we can also ask follow ups. One follow up was, you know what? I just want you to brainstorm some questions with me. And then maybe I want to turn that into a more structured interview guide that I can, again, plug into Genway. So I can ask it to turn these into a more structured interview guide. Again, Genway is an AI agent. It's not going to ask one by one the questions you plug in necessarily. It's more focused on all of the topics you're trying to understand and what's the best way to navigate those topics so conversations are successful. But you can create this sort of sectioned off guide. And then if I go back here, you can, in the project guidelines, add specific questions you want to make absolute sure it does ask. And then you make it more deterministic or whatever it might be. So what I can do now is I can go back, for example, to the first question and I can copy paste the full response I got from Genway GPT. And I can also, I think, increase the size, or maybe I can't. Don't know what's happening there. And then save that and move on. So it's going to analyze next question. And then I copy paste the second response that I got from Genway GPT. I believe it's going to be easier soon to just like in one single click, just transfer everything from Genway GPT to the system. For the time being, you have to do 5 copy pastes or 4 copy pastes if you don't have any general guidelines. So that's what I'm doing here, just copying over the responses that we got. And let me know if you have any questions in the meantime. I'm monitoring the chat. And then maybe I can take one question. Can you tell me about your current role and your team setup? And follow up, are you fully remote, hybrid, or something else? And maybe I want to make sure that this question is asked towards the beginning of the interview. So I can say, please ask the following question early in the interview. And then I can just paste that. So that's an example of a general guideline I can give. Again, I think it's not a great approach to give AI specific questions you wanted to ask and when, because the whole idea of using AI and leveraging AI is that you have the flexibility and that you are giving away some control to the system. Once we answer those questions, which we use ChatGPT to do, or Genway GPT to do, we can then create our draft project. And there are other things we have to do before the agent is ready to go. So I do want to jump into that. But before I do, any questions on this experience? Any feedback? Any pushback? Any thoughts? Any questions I didn't answer that I should have? Some of you wondered, like, what tools exist out there? What are the differences? Or how hard or easy is it to create this sort of thing? Now that you've seen this, how hard or easy does it feel? Or what else do you want to know? I'm watching the chat, so let me know what works for you. I'll give everyone a minute to add their questions. And in the meantime, as I monitor, I'll just show you that when you click on Create a Draft Project, then Genway will create the project for you and move you into the next stage of creating this agent, which is the settings for the agent. So there's a question here. Is there a cap on how much prior data and research you can input? And to the best of my knowledge, the answer is no, there isn't a cap. I'm not sure if there's a cap on links you can include. Let me actually check. So I don't know how many uploads you can do when it comes to context, if it's just one upload or more. But I do believe that you can upload or connect either research docs or decks that you have or whatever you need. So I don't believe there's a cap, is the short answer. Once companies become more open to more deeply integrate systems like Genway into their systems, like Snowflake would be an example, or Dovetail, or various knowledge management tools for insights, then Genway will have all of the context on the business and existing insights. And you won't even have to upload anything. It'll just all be there. The question is, will companies and will people like us be willing to make those integrations or not? I don't know. Do researchers have ability to control stakeholder access to this initial process? Yes, it's ultimately, if it's the research team that onboards a tool like Genway, it's up to you who to give access to the tool, for sure. Marianne is asking, will you cover how to monitor the quality of the moderation of the agent after it launches or starts conducting interviews? So I'll say a couple of things. First of all, Genway enables you to test the interview experience, right? I encourage you to open up your own account, start a project, whether it's on remote work or whatever you want, and then you can actually take an interview by simply choosing whether you want to interview with Alex or Rebecca, which is the current voices Genway supports. Turn on your microphone and then click on start the interview. And then you can experience the interview based on the inputs you gave to the agent. I always run multiple tests of my interviews before I launch them to anyone. On average, I would say that I go through at least 2 to 3 iterations before I actually launch a project. And what do I mean by iterations? I take the interview, I write some notes on the side of things that didn't go as well as I thought they should, or questions that weren't really working for me. And then I go back to the project details right here. And maybe I'll go down to what topics will we be covering. And I'll tell it, this topic isn't actually important to me. So I'll just delete the topic. So I'll just click on edit and I'll, let's say, delete this topic. And maybe I want to add a question around, do you feel more or less engaged in your day-to-day work since going remote? Like, I can add that question. I can do all sorts of stuff. And then once I analyze that answer and validate it in the system and save, the system will automatically adjust its interviewing based off of that. The second thing you can do, Marianne, to your question, is you can generate synthetic data. Now, I know that people have differing perspectives on synthetic data and its value. By synthetic data, an AI interviewing an AI. So this would be Genway creating 3 interviews where Genway's AI is interviewing Genway's AI. I'm still not super bullish on synthetic data, but it's another way you can test your interviews. I just prefer to do interactive demos. Then, moving on to the next part of my response to your question, once you launch this, in your settings, you can initially limit the number of interviews. So what I will often do is I'll conduct whatever number of interviews I feel I can actually look at and take in and understand. So let's say 10. And then once 10 interviews have happened, I will look at the transcripts, which you can do, and I will look at the insights coming out of them, and I will see, is this where I need to be or not? And if it's not, then again, I can go back to the project details, I can create a new version of the project, and I can reassess. So at every step of the process, there are ways to improve the way this works. Brad is asking, are there other best practices you've uncovered so far in your exploration with AI moderation? For example, you mentioned limiting hard-coded questions. Curious what else you've discovered. There's all sorts of things I could say here. For example, if I just try to cover the settings for a second, Genway enables you to conduct 10, 15, or 20-minute interviews. And hypothetically, they could also create longer interviews. I found that I primarily use Genway for conversations that would be around 15 minutes. So targeted conversations about a very specific topic. I think part of the reason for me is that Genway doesn't have an avatar, right? Genway doesn't appear human. Genway is essentially like graphics rather than a face. And I just feel like when you want to have a really deep conversation about something and a longer conversation than 15 minutes, maybe humans are still better for that purpose. So I found that 50-minute conversations is like a sweet spot with Genway. Genway also supports either talking or typing or both. I found that typing is slow. People don't love it. It doesn't work as well, in my opinion. So I only set my interviews to talking, which means if you want to participate in the interview, you have to turn your microphone on and you have to talk with the system. So that's another thing I found. And then there's a bunch of other things I could maybe jump into. But if I had to choose one question that's the most important, it's not actually what topics you'll be covering, because the AI is quite responsive to what's coming up in the conversation. It's actually this: what would you consider a successful outcome? I think in my early experiences with I was like, this isn't getting at what I wanted it to get. Why is that? And I would complain. I could have done this better. I would have gotten better insights. Whatever you define here as success is what you're going to get. Like, the agent will be super focused on trying to get you the outcomes you're looking for. And if you don't provide those outcomes in an accurate way, then it's not going to get you what you're looking for. So I think even more important than clarifying the objective, the research gap, the research questions, is clarifying exactly what you want to get out of these conversations. And in the future, I imagine Genway and any AI system will be a lot smarter about telling you, I don't think you can get this outcome in a 15-minute conversation, or I don't think you can get this outcome based on the research questions you included here. You need to add other questions. Here's some suggestions. Genway does not have that type of intelligence yet, but again, it's not far off, if you would ask me. So that's that. Another question: if you have an overall idea of how you want the interview to go, for example, ask about participant background first, then ask about their experience during COVID, then their experience now, is that achievable through Genway? So first of all, that is somewhat achievable, either by organizing your topics in that order, and often Genway will try to respect that order of the topics you're covering, which is what you're seeing right here, right? And it'll go somewhat question by question or somewhat topic by topic. The other thing you can do is in the general project guidelines, you can say something like, I have 5 topics, 1 is X, 2 is Y, 3 is Z, etc., etc. Please cover these topics by order. And that will force the system to cover the topics by the order you requested. Again, AI is always somewhat non-deterministic. Like, it might not go exactly in that order, or maybe a topic will be missed. It's possible. But those are the 2 things you can do. Bye, Brad. Thanks for joining. Mayan is asking, is there a place where I can direct the agent to show an image to the participants as part of the interview? And the answer is yes, but only if you were to choose, if I go back to all of my projects, only if you were to choose usability studies. And in usability studies, you can connect a Figma prototype and you can show participants as many screens as you want based on what's in the Figma prototype. And you can also ask specific questions on specific screens. So Definitely possible. You just have to choose a different type of interview. And then Renu is saying, I see value in using Genway AI to run preliminary or screener interviews. For sure, definitely one of the use cases. And I would encourage you to try it out for whatever you think works for you. We each have different use cases. Before we have to end, I just want to show you a few more things. So I ran through the settings and the testing. Feel free to explore that in your own time. Then we have the design component where we can adjust the way Genway looks to people based on our company logo, our company colors. You can add a background image if you want. And then finally, Genway supports either recruiting on your own from participants, customers of your company, or you can recruit with Genway's panel and you can add all sorts of criteria. Beliefs would be one example, work, education. There's all sorts of criteria you can use here. It's a fairly big panel of 180,000 people, carefully screened for high quality participants. So, really, if you recruit using the panel, you can probably get the insights you need in less than a day, maybe even hours, maybe even an hour singular. Once all of this is ready, all you have to do is publish here at the top right, and your agent is ready, good to go. You either get a link to send out to your own customers, or the panel customers will be recruited and it'll go from there. Sharona is asking, is it possible to train the agent to drill down and veer off script in case the user provides feedback that qualifies as an uncovered need, assuming you'd have to specify that in the desired outcome? So yes, Genway does drill down into things that participants say. Does it do that as well as a human researcher? That's for you to decide. But it does ask follow-up questions. It doesn't just ask the initial question and then move on to the next topic. So the first part of my answer is it does that naturally. Second of all, you need to define what success looks like. You need to define what resolution of insights you're looking for. And whatever resolution you define, that's the resolution the agent will try and get for you. You're giving an AI agent goals here. And based on the goals you give, that's what you get. To Renu's point, human oversight is still a must, and how you define the project will determine how it goes. But you have all sorts of ways to do this. Thank you, Tej, and others who have to drop off. And then Mayan, just to answer the question around, my own participants don't need to install anything, just click the link, right? And the answer is yes, correct. They don't have to install anything. They just have to click the link and participate in the interview. Any last minute questions before we say goodbye for the time being? Thank you everyone so much for joining. And please feel free to email me or LinkedIn message me or whatever works for you. I'm at noam@genway.ai if you want to chat through my Genway email or LinkedIn or whatever works for you. I really appreciate you joining, and I hope you learned how to build an AI agent, what an AI agent even is in the context of research, how to use Genway. I encourage you to try. The best way to learn is just to build. So log in, try it for yourself. And if you want to know the insights I got from this project, join the next workshop and I'll share those insights with you. Awesome. I'm so glad this was helpful. Thank you for the kind words. And I'm here for you if you want more help. Until then, cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. Have a good Friday. Happy Easter. Happy Passover. I'll see you next time. Bye for now, everyone. Really appreciate you.